Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gotham 2, which is essentially my second YouTube channel on which I post chess content that doesn't necessarily have to go on my main. Think Mogul Mail, Ludwig's Mogul Mail, but in the chess world. If you don't know who Ludwig is and you don't know who Mogul Mail is, that reference is useless. Today we will be covering yet another scandal that has hit the chess world, but it's a scandal that really is mostly reserved for the longtime chess players, the 2,000 plus chess players, the players who play a lot of over-the-board chess, and it's really, there's a disconnect between this scandal and the chess boom. I just said a lot of words, right? Let me take you through all of this. We'll be doing a lot of reading, and I will be doing a lot of explaining. TLDR, the two-sentence summary is, there is a type of chess format that has been introduced recently, which allows players to play 90-minute chess games remotely, meaning they can play against people on the other side of the world, but online, and it counts for real rating. So rating, or ELO, that you used to be able to earn only at tournaments, live face-to-face, you are now able to get that ELO when you play online in hybrid events. Okay, so let's jump into this. This all began when Robert Hess put out a tweet. And when Robert Hess puts out a tweet, you know, he doesn't put out a lot of tweets. So Robert Hess put out a tweet and he said, "My thoughts on the current state of FIDE events." Now, you don't have to read this entire thing. I'm going to try to summarize. It was essentially, there's a lack of oversight of governing bodies, jeopardizing the legitimacy of rating scholarships titles. Currently, FIDE-rated hybrid events see players increasing their ELO at alarming rates. This runs counter to the experience that can be observed from the progress of thousands of players. Hybrid matches are played online at specific venues, while opponents are online at a different location, which allows more convenient participation in international competitions. Robert actually wrote to the executive director of US Chess last October. The US Chess Federation put out a statement later, in like a month after that, which essentially said, you cannot register hybrid events from America. So what did these players do? They started registering events from foreign federations. US Chess did well to stop these tournaments, but organizers, including those from the US, found a way to circumvent this ruling by registering the hybrid events with foreign federations. So now the governing body is no longer the US, it's out of the US's hands, and it's by FIDE. And this was essentially Robert Hess's plea. Okay, what is going on, right? You might be like, why is this relevant to me? What is Robert complaining about? Essentially, a hybrid chess event is an event where two chess clubs on potentially opposite sides of the planet have to be certified and eligible to submit a hybrid event. Meaning, if I have this room as a chess club and I get it certified through FIDE, through the US Chess Federation, meaning I have fair play measures, I have an arbiter here. I hire an arbiter to sit right there and pet my frog from the Streamer Awards and supervise the players, make sure nobody cheats. This room can basically become certified. I can invite 5 people here. They pay me money as an entry fee, and and the same thing happens abroad. A chess club in Serbia, Bulgaria, something like that. They have the same exact thing. They have anti-cheat measures. We take an entry fee. The players come and play, and they play 5 or 6 90-minute games online over the course of 2 or 3 days, just like a chess tournament, and then those games count. I mean, in theory, it sounds like a decent practice, right? Especially, what if I'm like a 9-year-old kid and I live somewhere in California, and we can't afford to travel to Chicago. We can't afford to travel across the country. I don't have a lot of tournaments around me. I play a lot on chess.com. I'm 9 years old. But how do I gain international rating? Well, this is a great opportunity. I go to my local chess club, which is certified to play hybrid events. I play people in real games, and I do well, and I gain ELO. I mean, in theory, it should work. The complaint here is this. This is the problem, okay? And this was put out by Chris Bird, who said the USA-Serbia hybrid events, Serbia was essentially like the most common opponent for these clubs, especially in California. Look at the rating gains for USA players versus losses for Serbia players. So US players gained 120 points, 130. These are basically young players, and they gained a lot of points. All of the US players gained points. Serbia player might have, lost a little bit, lost a lot, lost, lost. In fact, every player from Serbia that participated in this hybrid event lost elo, is essentially, unless I'm misreading this, and every US player gained, unless maybe one of them did not. So therein lies the problem. The problem is, what seems to be happening is for the most part, young players from the US that are underrated are playing players from Serbia that could have elos from 10 years ago or even more recently, but the conditions are not the same. The time difference between Serbia and Los Angeles is 9 hours? And if the game is played at noon in Los Angeles, which is a reasonable time to play chess, the players in Serbia are playing at 9 p.m. And that game goes till midnight. And what if they have to play 2 games? Like, what if the schedule is 10 a.m. LA time and then 4 p.m.? They play 2 games in a day. Well, then the player in Serbia has to play 4 plus 9. They got to play at 1 in the morning? They got to play a full chess game at 1 in the morning. There is no way to remedy that situation. Not to mention, some of the players playing from Serbia might be 60 years old, 70 years old, right? So essentially, they are not as incentivized, right? Like, if you're a young player from the US, you are far more incentivized to crush this tournament and gain 100 points, right? So first, the United States Chess Federation said, you know what? We don't like that kids are basically farming elo off of these competitions, so we're not going to let the chess clubs based in US, we're not going to let them submit. So what did the chess clubs in the US do? They asked the club in Serbia to submit it to FIDE. So the event can still happen. Nothing really changes. So this is Robert's kind of plea to the International Chess Federation to step in. Now, there's a lot of moving parts here. Like, on the one hand, there is the fact that, why don't I just save money and take my kid to my local chess club? The kid is obviously very good. He's just going to, he or she, it doesn't matter. They're going to win all their games because they're playing older folks that are playing at 1 a.m. and my kid is underrated and my kid is going to gain a bunch of points. Now, I even thought about this myself. I thought, like, why don't I go play some hybrid events and get to like 2,700 and try to make the candidates? Like, you know what I mean? I mean, theoretically, nothing is stopping me from doing that in hybrid events. Now, this was picked up, right? Hess's thing was picked up. Fabiano chimed in, Fabiano Caruana. He chimed in. Chris Bird, who's an international arbiter, chimed in. Now, there was kind of a response issued to Robert. I would say that the individual who campaigned this response was probably the most outspoken. His name is Mike Zalozny. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And he essentially did his own twit longer, and they competed for who had the longer twit longer. Basically, he said, look, I've played 17 of these events. And, I'm a 40-year-old man. I'm employed. He said that somewhere in here. And I've won... Where is it? I've won 36 games. I have 29 losses. All of my games are available in the database, and so on and so forth. And he essentially made the argument that he has traveled to tournaments to play, and it's much easier for him to play local events and not have to spend 5 or 6 days at over-the-board tournaments and spend the money and so on and so forth. And hybrids are a great equalizer. And, he even gets into the specifics. Like, if someone in Europe is 71 and hasn't played in 30 years, if someone has a rating of 2,200, they haven't played, like, why is that their elo, right? And so on and so forth. So I will link all of this in the description if you would like to read into it. It's essentially important now to move our discussion to the fact that this is actually a much bigger problem than hybrids. What does that mean? It's the subject of ELO specifically, and the chase of titles, and the chase of International Master and Grandmaster. When you are a parent and you have a very talented child, I mean, maybe this is strictly an American thing, many parents will try to go to any possible end to make sure that that kid breaks a bunch of records. Whether it's youngest Grandmaster, whether it's getting the International Master title at the age of 11. Like, parents homeschool children to get chess titles. It's not uncommon. It's not necessarily a bad thing if the child will end up being a prodigy. I'm sure it happens in many sports as well. But in chess specifically, like, kids will travel internationally to play in chess tournaments. ELO specifically, there's two things. Number one, there is something called a rating change factor in chess. It's called a K factor. And the K factor is how much your rating changes based on a win, a loss, or a draw. I have a rating that was over 2,400. It fell. We don't have to talk about that. So my K factor is the lowest, which is when you cross 2,400, your rating factor becomes basically, let's say, 1. Okay? It changes at the lowest possible level. A few years ago, FIDE implemented something where if you're under the age of 16 or 18 and your rating is below 2,300, you have a rating change factor of 40! 4 times. So if I beat somebody and I gain like 8 points for that game, the other person can beat somebody and gain 32 points and lose 32 points. I don't know why they did that. Maybe that was to like incentivize young players to play. But the biggest kind of like crazy story that came out of that was John Burke. In August 2015, this young man gained 300 points in one period. John Burke was a teenager, and for a rating, he's now a grandmaster. He's like a college student or a grad. He grew into this ELO. He is a grandmaster. But in 2015, he wasn't no grandmaster. And the craziest thing is this man was rated 2603. 2603. And look how much rating he dropped. And then he restabled. I mean, he was pretty much destined to be a GM anyway. But in one period, he went from 2258 to 26. That's nuts. So that's number one. ELO has always been a very weird thing in over-the-board chess. Number one is that rating change factor, okay? Number two is where do you go to gain ELO? Where do you go? Now we have this hybrid event, but traditionally speaking, there have been two different types of chess tournaments to try to get Grandmaster titles or ELO. One, which we will cover last, is just a tournament. Just a tournament. They rent a hotel somewhere. You could sign up. It's 5 days. Anybody can play. Rating requirements. We have sections. That's it. It's just a tournament. As many people can sign up as the fire hazard of the capacity of the hotel allows. The other is a closed round robin. 10 players. Everybody plays everybody. All the criteria is met. So I can show up to a round robin event, and if I want a Grandmaster norm, I know how many points I need. I have to score 6.5 out of 9, and that will get me a Grandmaster norm. Closed events, round robin events, historically, have a little bit of a gray area because theoretically, if I'm a young kid and I travel to somewhere in Europe, just like the hybrid situation, but I travel somewhere in Europe and I want to pay somebody to lose to me. I'm not saying this happens. It might. I got all my norms in America, so I didn't pay anybody to lose to me. But if like this could happen anywhere, theoretically, I could pull aside somebody and go, "Hey, if I give you $200, will you lose to my kid?" Right? If I'm a nobody, theoretically that could happen. And that's essentially the argument being made for hybrids. In hybrids, it's even more important. Like you don't even see the person, right? So if I'm a grandmaster and I have zero incentive to play in a round robin, I'm playing 9 people who all want my ELO. I gain no title. I already had the title. Should round robins even exist? Round robins can exist at the highest level. 10 players, all grandmasters, they don't care. But like to specifically try to get norms? Now, for the record, I'm not saying that is what happens. I am just simply telling you what is possible. I will give you an example. a round robin, and this is not the only example of this. You all know Buddy Pranav, V Pranav from India. He's a very, very, very strong player, okay? A very good player. And he had a tournament in Hungary where he showed up and got 8.5 out of 9 because he was always going to be great. And now he's 2,600. He stomped this tournament. He destroyed this tournament. And he did this completely legitimately. I'm 100% legitimate. All I'm saying is this tournament gets organized. They need to have 3 grandmasters, and they have some other players that are trying to get norms. Look, some players don't do very well. Some players do get 3.5. They still gain rating, right? They still, they don't get like 8.5. They still gain elo. Some people lose. There was nothing illegitimate about this tournament in Vezirkepso in Hungary. There was nothing, 100% legitimate tournament. V Pranav, he is just an exceptional chess player. So the ecosystem of competitive chess to get titles and norms is that you can go to open tournaments, but there's no guarantee in open tournaments that you're going to play the right amount of people to get the Grandmaster title. You're not gonna, you don't have guaranteed opponents. And to get norms, to get titles and gain elo, you need X amount of players not from the host country. You need to play X amount of grandmasters. You need to play a certain average rating of opponents. Norm tournaments just simplify that process and then incentivize you to play. But the last thing that I want to talk about is the cost of playing over the board chess. So the cost of playing over the board chess is as follows. Let's say you want to play in Chicago Open. By the way, chess tournaments have garbage, right? Like written like this. Okay. I mean, it's just, you want to go to Chicago Open, Memorial Day weekend. It's in Wheeling, Illinois. It's a 5-day tournament. Let's say I want to take my kid there. It's a 5-day tournament. Hotel rate is $130 a night. Let's say we want to stay there even at the minimum 4 nights. All right. That would be $130. That's $260, $520, taxes and fees. Let's say like $600-700. We got to eat for the 5 days that we're there with my kid. We got to maybe rent a car because there's nothing, there's nowhere to walk or drive. To enter the tournament, to register, the entry fee is open entry fee for titled players is, free. But let's say you're just some random kid. I mean, it's going to cost you a couple $100. All right, $207 online. What if we don't live there? What if we live in California? I'm not going to check flight fees, but you get it. At the end of this tournament, I might have paid $1,500 for my kid to play in this event and not necessarily guarantee the right mix of opponents to get a norm or a title. So you're going to pay like $1,500 to $2,000 for one tournament? What if this tournament goes badly? Why would you not guarantee that you play the right amount of opponents? And maybe the entry fee is like $600. And if you go to Europe, lodging is cheaper, food is cheaper. You know what I'm saying? So I am not exonerating hybrid events. I think in summary, this was to give an image of the competitive ecosystem as a chess player that is looking to gain elo and titles specifically. If you are just like 12, 1300, you want to play at your local club, you don't need to worry about hybrid events. The major issue at hand is the pursuit of elo, the pursuit of titles in the world of chess. And the problem with hybrid events is that they have been used by mostly young players to gain potentially hundreds of points in a span of like a week against players that are not necessarily incentivized to play at their best, that are playing at ridiculous hours of the night, that could potentially be incentivized to not win. And while there are outliers, like the case of Mike Z, who is a 40-year-old employed individual, a very intense chess hobbyist, and actually gets quite a bit of benefit of the local hybrid event, by and large, Robert Hess's initial complaint and all of the follow-ups are saying, something's wrong here. You can't have 20 participants gain elo and 20 participants on the other side lose it. And that's the case. So on the one hand, you could just ban hybrid events entirely, which might happen. On the other hand, it's very difficult for a chess player that lives in Washington State in the United States to gain FIDE without spending FIDE rating without spending $2,000 to travel to Chicago Open for their kid to play a tournament once every 6 months. Right? So, but this happens everywhere in the world. There are many players like when I was in the World Cadet Championship, I was coaching Team USA in China in Weifang 2019. A lot of those kids don't really play FIDE tournaments, but they have strength like of 1800. So this is what's happening. All right. It's kind of being deemed a cheating scandal. Like I saw, like, and it's cheating ELO. But the truth is, we do need to find an overall solution, whether it's hybrid, whether it's live chess tournaments, of how to not abuse the ELO and title system for the young players. And there have been changes made. For instance, now you cannot earn all 3 of your norms for a title at closed events. At least one of your norms for the Grandmaster or International Master title, if you don't know what that is, I have a video on how to become a title player. If you have to earn one of your 3 norms at an open tournament. So you cannot just be like, yo, boys, let's organize a 10-player thing and let me just beat everybody. And so that's the case. That's currently the situation. And as you can tell from cases like V. Pranav, just because he traveled to Hungary to get 8.5 out of 9 and absolutely brutalize everybody doesn't mean that his title is illegitimate at all. He's a grandmaster and he's 26-something. He's a rapidly ascending chess player. And his rise is not uncommon. A lot of people will travel to places like Europe, demolish absolutely everybody because they are the best player, and get their title. Did they do it illegitimately? No, absolutely not. So that's the current state of things. A little bit of an update, and hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you want me to do more like this where I talk through things that are happening in the chess world. Get out of here.